Welcome to NJBIA is Minding Your Business. I'm Bob Considine. Well, it's October, which means it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Here to discuss the importance of making sure everyone has the resources they need to be safe and secure online are from Peapack-Gladstone Bank, Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer Kevin Runyon, and Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer John Kowal. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here.
That's a pleasure.
You know, it occurred to me as I was doing the intro that maybe since you're the tech guys, we should have had Java instead of water in the lounge. But I apologize for that. We'll get that. We'll take care of it later. Before we get into the cybersecurity thing, let's talk about Peapack-Gladstone Bank. How long has the bank been in existence?
Sure. So we've been in business for 100 years. We
Wow.
just celebrated our 100-year anniversary last year in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
We're really excited about that. We're really excited about being around another 100 years to service our clients and our communities as well.
And I look forward to being there for all 100 years. All right, so that's great, Kevin. Let's talk about Cybersecurity Month. What is it, and why is it important that small businesses pay attention to it?
Well, back in 2004, the federal government started Cybersecurity Month, and they designated October as the month that they would put out information regarding current cyber-related incidents, threats, and how to protect yourself against those. So it's been building. It's been building as the years have gone on, and October's a great month for businesses and individuals to go out and look for that information, find out what the current threats are and how to protect themselves.
Yeah, it seems to me we hear more about cybersecurity because we're using so much of our technology so much more, and you got to be that much more protective. What would you say? Small or large businesses have to be more wary about the threats?
Well, Bob, the reality is today, everyone's a target. You only hear about the largest companies and the largest attacks in the news, but small businesses are really starting to struggle with cybercrime. And I'll give you an example of how that happens, right? So you get those strange emails, those phishing emails, and they call them that because these attackers, they cast a very wide net.
Right.
There's tens of thousands of people, and they just need one person to bite. And if that's you, if you click that link, if you open that attachment, if you reply to the email, then you become the mark.
Right.
And they're going to put their full effort towards you.
Right.
That's a very tough position for a small business to be. And that's how businesses of all sizes, all shapes get targeted. This idea that my business is too small or my business is too uninteresting for a cyber attacker to bother with, we call that security by obscurity. That's no longer a reality.
Right.
That's why it's a very dangerous world.
Right.
For
They're like,
businesses.
who's looking at me, basically?
Right.
All right, so how important is it that small businesses take ownership of protecting themselves versus waiting for something to happen?
Yeah, it's very important that they take ownership. They can be attacked at any time, any place, and it could be devastating.
Right.
You've heard a lot about ransomware and how that can impact a customer. And mostly it's in the news about the larger companies, but the same things are happening with the smaller companies. And those type of attacks can cost those smaller companies hundreds of thousands of dollars and even put them out of business. So they have to be proactive and go out and understand where these attacks are coming from.
So small businesses have actually been put out of business because of ransomware.
Yeah, for sure. It happens all the time.
Wow.
I mean, the bad guy's getting $100,000 from a large company or a small company, it doesn't matter. And the small companies are easier targets.
Now, I will say these attackers, they do their research.
Yeah.
They will look at what size company you are,
Right.
what you can uncomfortably afford. So it's not uncommon that they'll steal your files, they'll lock them up, and they'll try to sell you the key. And if you don't have that key, you're not getting your data back. And they're going to ask for $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 from a small business. It could be devastating, but they know what they have. And we do recommend, if companies are interested, they need to look at protect themselves with offline backups. Offline backups is really the premise of you have your data and you put it on a hard drive, you store it in a safe.
Right.
And that way, when your computer gets broken into, the attackers, they can't touch that. And you always have your data. They'll never be able to prevent you from accessing your data.
Right. How about in terms of, is there any other calls they can make? Like if it's something that's going to impact them financially, do they call the police? I mean, this is something major. This is theft. I mean, it's not just somebody stealing your data, it's stealing your money.
Well, we always recommend, definitely call the police. And as a bank, don't forget to call your bank too, especially if you're dealing with someone who is targeting your financial accounts, your personal information.
Right.
We'll take that abundance with caution with you,
Right.
and we'll make sure your accounts are safe. It's in our interest and it's in your interest.
Right.
But do call the police. Start with your local police. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the resources they have, the way they can direct you. But really what's important to know is that the FBI aggregates all criminal complaints on cybercrime. They deal with about 2,000 complaints a day, right?
Wow.
So
That's nationally?
Nationally.
Okay.
And so you may have just gotten scammed out of $100,000 or some fraud that hit you, and that could be absolutely devastating. But you are far, far, far from the biggest case that they're dealing with. That's why prevention is so important. That's why if you don't have cyber insurance, talk to your insurance provider about that and see what coverage you can get. Because you need to protect yourself. You need to own your cyber risk.
Some of the threats we always talk about, phishing. But then there's something called spear phishing. Do you guys know what that is, and how much of a threat is this?
Sure. So, I can talk a little bit about that. Spear phishing is, they'll, as John mentioned before, they'll cast a big net, with a phishing attempt. But then once they get someone hooked, they'll do a direct campaign against that person. They'll learn about you. Right. They'll direct certain things about you and get you to think that you're dealing with somebody that really understands you and you know.
So how do you stop it? Like, how can you look at an email and know that this is probably a phishing thing? What kind of things are you looking for?
Well, you want to look for red flags, right? And the number one red flag is urgency. Nice. Open this attachment now, click this link, send this money. Fake legal threats, fake law enforcement demands. They're trying to get act quick and make a mistake. Right. Now, another important thing to look for is just something you weren't expecting. And that's overarching, right? You get an email from an old colleague. You get an email from a coworker, but you said, well, this is vague. This attachment is weird. Just give them a call. Make sure, was that really you? And I think you'll be surprised at the number of times they say, no, that wasn't me.
Sometimes I get these phishing emails, and it's like some of them don't seem very realistic at all. But I'm wondering, I guess there are some that are pretty sophisticated in their approach, right? They can trick you pretty easily. Yeah,
sure. I mean, a perfect example is, a president of the bank sends you an email that says, I need you to wire out money today. Well, it could be that the president of your company got hacked, and then you're getting an email from a bad actor creating a sense of urgency for you to do something. So, I mean, a good rule of thumb for every small business is if you're seeing something by email, always validate it, right? Don't react to it. It means picking up the phone, a little bit old school, and making sure that what you're doing is not going to be a costly mistake.
What kind of things can businesses do to protect their finances?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Banks are a great resource. They offer a lot of services, things like positive pay and other services that can help protect your bank against fraud. But as John mentioned before, if you are a victim of a cyber event, call your bank. They're a great resource. We get on the phone with a lot of our customers that have experienced cyber events and to try to help them through that.
All right. What do you think, John?
Well, one of the biggest recommendations, and everyone, business and consumer, can go on online banking and do this today, is to set account alerts and account limits. So let's say you're a small business and you have an account, well, I don't really ever see myself sending more than $10,000 in a single transaction out of this account. You should get a text and an email when that happens. Because if it's fraudulent, the quicker you know, the quicker you can tell the bank, the better we can respond and help you. You can also set limits. So that same account, you may want to say, well, I don't want any transaction over $20,000 going out the door. And I'll tell you, in my own online banking, I'll get an alert for every single transaction. It just sends me an email, I check it quick, but if there's any fraud, I will know immediately because I'll get an email on a transaction I didn't do.
So I'm wondering, as the years go on, do you hear of more cases of small businesses really being ripped off and they just don't know what to do?
Yeah, for sure. Small businesses are targeted every day. I mean, at our bank, every bank has businesses that are undergoing, a cyber event almost every single day. So helping them through those, because a lot of times they don't know the resources they should be using, steps they should be taking. And a real interesting statistic, if you're a small business and wonder why you have to be concerned, the FBI, they put out their 2021 cybercrime report, and $2.4 billion of cyber theft is attributed to small business just in 2021.
Wow.
So everyone's a target, so you have to be prepared.
So how about in terms of employers? What can they do to help employees from being susceptible to these challenges?
Well, you have to train them, and this is Cyber Month, so there's some great resources out there. But you also have to test them. There's this pervasive thought that it'll never happen to me. It's not only amongst businesses, small and medium, but amongst employees. So there's a great software out there where you can send these fake emails and see how they behave in an environment where the consequences are not there.
Right.
That not only trains them, but it keeps them on alert, for when the real thing comes in. And when it does, they might say, "Oh, is this one of those trainings?" And you'll say, "Well, no, this was a real thing,
Right.
and thankfully you didn't respond to it."
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that is actually happening here at NJBIA. We've used this software, and I feel like the training does help. Like sometimes it's like, I'm never going to fall for that. But there have been times or emails I'm looking and I'm like, I'm not so sure. Hey, could you make that? Did this happen? I'll give you a call. And you're like, no, that wasn't me. So.
It's important you mentioned that, Bob, because a lot of your audience might think, well, they're a bank, so of course they're testing their employees. They have this software,
Right.
But this software is becoming very common in medium, small businesses as well.
Mm-hmm.
You can even make up your own little test against your employees too. Anything you can do to keep them on alert and say, whether it's training or the real deal, yes, this can happen to you, and so stay on guard.
John, another component of this is service providers. What should folks be asking of their service providers as it relates to cybersecurity?
Well, it's important first to find a provider that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
And talk to your industry groups. A lot of these IT providers work in verticals. So you can talk to your colleagues at other businesses and say, who are you using? Who do you like? Because when you can trust someone, you can sit down with them and say, what services do I have? What would happen if we got hit with ransomware? If someone steals my password, what can they do with that?
Right.
And we're not just looking to check a box. We're not just looking for yes or no answers or, you'd be covered in that situation. We're looking for them to explain it to you in a way that you understand. Because at the end of the day, as we were discussing, you own your cyber risk. It's your business, it's your reputation, it's your money on the line when it comes to cybersecurity, and you want to make sure you understand what your provider is doing.
Yeah, you hit on the word reputation. You could be in business for 100 years and develop this reputation, and that could be all gone in one day, one afternoon, right?
With the click of one button.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Kevin, just in terms of, let's wrap it up. It's Cybersecurity Month. What do you recommend to the folks?
Yeah, so October is Cybersecurity Month. There's a lot of very good new information out on the internet through providers. As John mentioned, talk to your provider about it. Take some time during this month of October, learn about the current cybersecurity risk, educate yourself on how you protect yourself against them, and be diligent.
Very good. All right, folks. Well, this is great information. For more information for you folks out there, go to pgbank.com/security, and they have plenty of great tips. John Kowal, Kevin Runyon, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, be back right after these words.